Hello, welcome to The Poetry Show, and we are the Pod Poets, and we are here to discuss poetry. This is the podcast that aims to bring poems and poetic discussion to those who love poetry and those who really aren't all that sure about poetry, and we're just going to discuss a different theme each week and see if we can be the Pod Poets and take over your brain and teach you a new way to think about poetry. Occasionally, we might use a naughty word to discuss an edgy theme, so you have been warned. My name is Rose Drew, and I'm here with my other Pod Poets, although we are down one Pod Poet for today. Every now and then, one of us is away, or one of us is just doing too much other stuff, and so Laurence will not be here to growl into the microphone and make misanthropic I can't say that word, now can I? We have to edit
misanthropic.
That out. Misanthropic. Thank you. Well, anyway, Laurence, you're now throwing things at the radio going, I like people. So, no, that's all right. Today, we are going to discuss a topic. And every show we will discuss a topic. And so this one today is religion. That is right. Yes, today is religion. We will bravely tread where few dare to go unless you are a bigot running for American president. And so here we are talking about religion. And I am joined by
Charlie,
yes, and I am joined by
Alan.
Yes, and not by Laurence this time. That's very sad. Well, this is good that almost everyone is here because each one of us has a different view of religion. I think Charlie is truly spiritual, and Alan is I don't know, open-minded, and I have no idea what I am, except I would like to be able to comment on my friends even after I'm dead. So my ego doesn't want to vanish. And Laurence is generally downright hostile, although he claims he's not. So we'll have to hear from him at another time. So I think today's the topic of religion will be fun all around for all of us. So what I will do is I will read a poem on religion, and we can discuss it. And then Charlie will read a poem on religion, and we can discuss it. And Alan will read a poem on religion. And we will just hope that in future we hear what Laurence has to say on it, because I actually would really like to know. So in any case, today I'm going to start with one I wrote. I actually wrote this a few years ago, and I had been in and out of a hospital because I'd had a little thing done, and this lady kept following me around the hallway, and it was dreadful. And finally, at the end, she kept pestering me, and I finally said, Ma'am, where are the reverends? Where are the imams? Where are the rabbis? Why is it only you? And then I went home and I angrily wrote this poem, and it is called The God Squad. Please don't try to save my soul. It isn't lost. Please do not hammer me with your views. They aren't mine. Please do not hound me down the hospital hall with cries of, I've prayed for you, claiming holy credit for my health. Please do not pull up the chairs beside me, removing the New York Times that I was reading so that you can ponder my emptiness. My scary nights of no great God, Mommy, come to tuck me in, salve my wounds, put cool cloth on my brow. Stop it. Go burn the sacred text in some poor village. Go knock down another false idol who comforts heathens whom you wish to save so that they will not burden you. Go remove all trace of the God of peace. Good yams, safe motherhood, plentiful game, and install your own God. Until the next God Squad removes your spreading lichen views and chisels your saints from the renamed temple walls. So there, that's my view. That's a bit of the anthropologist in me. And there's a woman I know who I really respect. She doesn't write poetry, or she claims she doesn't, but she loves it. And she goes, that's going on the office door. And Della put it up on the office door. She says, it's very anthropological. So that's my view of religion. It's okay what you do, but don't she actually did. She told me my life must be empty. Oh dear. No, and then she took away my newspaper. Tell me that. So that's part of my view on organized religion, I suppose. You have a different one, Alan. You like the idea of religion and the community of it and all of that, I've heard over the years.
Yes.
No.
I think that there's been a role for religion throughout time, and it has been, if you like, to support I would call it the state or to support authority.
Well, that's true. I think the Bible is just a good book of rules to live by. I mean, most of them are, aren't they? I mean, a fellow once said the Torah basically says treat your neighbor as you would like them to treat yourself. The rest is commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's I think there's a good point to that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it stems from very basic things. If you live in a village by the river and some wise old man has looked up the hills and says, a lot of dark clouds up there. I think we better move up to the high ground because it's going to get a bit wet down here. And the local lord or gang master or whatever says, come on, folks, let's just get ourselves up to the river, up onto the hills while the floods go by. And so, but of course, there's always somebody, old Mother Granger, who sits there and digs her heels and says, I'm not leaving my land. You would then look to the local priest, who would shaman, who'd go away and do some smoke and bells and say, Mother Granger, you've got to go up to the hills with everybody else. Because that was an important part of getting people to actually do what they had to do to make the land live, to keep the land fertile, to do those hours and hours of digging and slogging or whatever it is you had to do.
See, that's also an anthropological view of religion.
It is. But the problem that religion has now is that it doesn't. It sits there now and digs its heels in against society instead of for society. It has become too powerful for its own good, and that's a concern that I have.
Okay.
I think the main problem with religion is that people are involved in religion and that people keep the religion going, and people aren't perfect, and people have flaws and they have faults and they get corrupted by power and all that kind of stuff. So rather than God or the original spiritual text being the problem, it's the way people interpret them and then use them for their own gain and their own advantage. I think that's more of an issue.
Yeah, I think after a while of realizing this guy can make people run up the hill when there's a flood coming or not, that might be a little grand, you know.
Yeah.
Look what I made them do. And by the way, I need something to eat and drink, and I know something shiny on my fingers.
Yeah, I think that is more of the problem. That's where the problem lies, is the people that... Some people are in it for good, and religion can play a massive part in kind of driving social action and driving social change.
Yes.
And has done in the past. But then you see incidences where they've just used it for their own advantage and their own gain.
I'm thinking of the TV evangelical Christians in America that have churches that hold 1 million people or something, or 10,000.
Yeah, the mega churches.
Yeah, the mega churches. They're on a big screen. Aha, believe! And they got big shiny cars and several mansions.
Yeah, I'm quite skeptical of them.
I think maybe so. And they go, hail, and someone gets up and walks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm quite skeptical of the mega churches and kind of all the hype around those kind of things. I would stay far away from that generally.
Yeah. And they bring them. These churches hold thousands, and thousands go to them.
Yeah.
So it's answering something that they want. I mean, there's something that this person, generally a guy, is saying that is getting them.
I think a lot of the time it's community.
Yes, well, exactly.
There's a need for community in our world, and even more so these days than in the past, when families aren't close by and things like that. And like our church is like our family. Like, we have older people that we can ask advice of, and we have younger people who can babysit in the future. It's like our little family that we can rely on those people. Well, and I think that's a big draw.
I think so, and I think I've heard Alan say that over the years, that it really is a sense of community, and that's what this got to me. I've been in England for 10 and a half years, and each political neighborhood is called a parish, and it strikes me as that, well, not a bit, religion and state intertwined, but no, it's just the way of looking at it, because there was a building somewhere in the middle of that parish, and people tended to go there when times were good or times were bad, and there is that sense of community, and I have heard you say that, Alan.
Yeah. And you knew who the people were. So when somebody who was destitute came for help, you knew that they were genuinely destitute, genuinely had a problem, and the community would wrap around to help. And this is something I am continually trying to figure out. How do we get that back into our own society? And I'm very, very skeptical of these huge, what I would now call mega mega districts
Yes.
where we vote for people we've never heard of, don't understand, and quite honestly, most of the issues have absolutely got nothing to do with us. So, the huge metropolitan councils, I think, are so wrong. We need to go back to the parish structure for councils so that we actually elect people we know, elect people we live with, and to do things and help people that we know locally and deal with local issues, because it really is making people very sceptical about becoming political. They are actually becoming terroristical in their view because they can't get anything done, and it's because they're no longer linked to a place anymore.
Yeah.
I like how you've linked politics and religion, because I think that's the thing that has really happened. That happened almost, I suppose, right off the bat, after someone realized the power involved with making people do things. The other thing, anthropologically speaking, that I have seen in studies of people who were around to still be studied in the 1950s and 60s, a lot of times a tree falling on a hut in the middle of the night and wiping out a family was explained by the spirit of the forest, because you had no other way to explain these things. They were fine, they were nice, good with their kids, whap. And I think sometimes that was the need for it too, was to explain the unexplainable or the desperately sad. And I think that you had to have that.
Well,
Alan,
that's kind of the motivation behind the creation stories, because no one was there at creation.
Yes.
And even in Genesis, there are two completely different accounts of creation. In Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, they're completely different.
They're different?
So that's obviously come from needing to explain, well, how did we all end up here? How did we all come to be here? So next time you hear about creationism,
oh no,
just remember that.
So does one have an apple tree and one doesn't?
I can't remember what it is. I should have looked it up before I came.
That's okay. I've got a goal for this afternoon.
Well, the Torah has a number of similar stories. Essentially, there are some slight differences to do with the relationships and the role of the snake, but there are a series of different creation myths, and they also exist all the way across different religions. Wherever you go, there is a creation myth.
Yeah.
Well, I think so. People have to explain. I mean, it could be anything from coming in on a turtle or out of a cave, or there has to be a reason why we are here. And so there is that. You are waving a bit of paper in your hands, Mr. Allen.
Not really. I'm just
you look ready to go.
Ready, yes.
You are ready to go.
Well, this is almost a creation, actually. Creation story, so I might as well. It's called The Eighth Day. On the morning of the 8th day, amidst an unbearable chitter of slithering seraphs and a relentless chatter of capering cherubim and the most loathsome of headaches, of course assuming that we, in assuming the likeness of God, can assume that God has a head, and such a head can assume the theocorporeal equivalent of a migraine. Before looking out over this creation and proudly exclaiming that it was good, God first regretted the overindulgence of nectar and ambrosia at last night's We Finished the World party, noting briefly that it was even worse than the one from inducing the Big Bang. With a swirl of the theocorporeal robe, dispersing the throng of the heavenly host throughout the known and unknown universe, God set out to clear the assumptive head and gloat over the wonderful Ouch! Oh my, God thought. Woe is me, alack a day! This being the theomental equivalent of blasphemous and sexual epithets, as God finally looked out over creation, seeing the stark reality of giving man dominion over the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Why, oh why, did I petulantly ignore Lucifer's most insistent nagging to allow mankind be only stewards of this creation, whose resources are almost gone, and the bewildering array of fascinating creatures has taken eons of tinkering, vanishing as fast as the poisonous emanations of this foul creature overwhelm the globe? And where on earth had the platform of presumptive preachers gotten the idea they could assume the voice of God and prophesy in his name, assuming an inappropriate masculinity for a deity who had had considerable fun in the role of Belial, Venus, and the moon in all her aspects? And by what incredible authority did they advocate the subjugation of women and the torment of children, the repression of the weak and the oppression of the meek, and the tyranny of a corrupt priesthood which had gotten this notion that they were just like God? God sighed. Reaching for the quiver of thunderbolts, I leave someone else in charge for just one day, and I come back to 7 more days hard labor.
Oh, I like your creation myth. That's pretty good. That's going right back to dominion of, yes, I'd really like that. Well, that's anthropological too. What was your impetus to write that?
I don't know, actually. I've got to look. When did I do it? Oh, that was just 10 years ago. 11 years ago.
It's historic.
Yes, it is. I think it's just that I do get very tired of people assuming that what is written is as written.
Oh gosh, yes.
And
yeah.
you know, I have another series of poems called Between the Lines, where I take various characters in the Bible, in basically the New Testament story, and put them back into the role that they were really in at the time that those events occurred, because we forget that the whole Jesus story took place in a population that was far less than the population of London. People knew everybody. It's like medieval England. People didn't pop out of nowhere, and they had a history, and somebody somewhere knew who they were, knew their antecedents. So someone like Jesus Christ wouldn't have just popped out of the woodwork and suddenly been proclaimed Messiah. People knew something about him that was true enough to link him to the role that he was portraying. He'd never have got away with it. Things like the Palm Sunday would never have happened if there wasn't a link, and people understood that link. It just didn't come out of nowhere.
When you say a link, like to his history,
to his history, to his relatives, to they'd have known about this child who was in the temple arguing with Hillel and Gamaliel on large and religious topics as a theologian. So he was known. He wouldn't have vanished. No, Joseph wouldn't have been able to do what he did unless he was actually rich. Yet we call him a poor carpenter. Yet he would never have been in Bethlehem unless he'd been rich. He would never have been able to afford to go to Egypt unless he was rich.
You mean he wouldn't have been counted if he
wouldn't have been counted. He was the head of a family.
Well, maybe the head of what you're saying then is the head of a wealthy family.
Yes.
I like that. It's a historical read. It's an historical read.
So there's a lot, as I say, there's a lot you need to put between the lines to say these wonderful stories with this medieval twitch on it. But the reality is it would never have happened unless there were certain sets of events. And one of the things was people knew who Jesus was from a very early on.
All right.
But there's also a bit in the Bible somewhere about how Jesus was rejected in Nazareth, where he was from, and they just said, "This is just Joseph's boy. This is a carpenter's son.
Yeah.
This is," and he was rejected there and kind of welcomed everywhere else, really.
Oh wow!
So a prophet is always rejected in his hometown.
Oh goodness! Does that what's happened to me? I'm sorry. I want.
Which one's your hometown?
Yeah, I know. Ooh, there's that, isn't it? There's Miami, there's Norwalk, there's York. I would have to really, people say, where are you from? I actually never know how to answer that. I just go, America, the East Coast. You've got a poem for us too. We've each got 2 today. So I would love to hear a poem you want to read for us now, Charlie.
Well, I thought I'd continue on Alan's what he was saying about putting New Testament characters back in their kind of original setting.
Oh, I like that, yeah.
So I wrote this from the point of view of the woman caught in adultery. And it's called Red-Handed Pants Down. They caught me. Red-handed, pants down, caught in the act. Nothing I can do, no turning the clock back. They saw with their own eyes just what I've done. There's definitely no way I'm getting out of this one. I'm guilty as charged. They got what they came for. A sinner, a temptress, a slut, and a whore. And so this is my fate. To be dragged through the streets, burning with shame in the early morning heat. Make way for a sinner, they cry. Make way for a whore. This woman has broken the law of the Lord. And so she must be punished. She must be stoned to death. Is it not so? They asked this rabbi. awaiting his response with bated breath as the pack of wolves draws closer, eager for my naked flesh. And I bow low before him, not a shred of dignity left, desperate for a miracle. To save me from my fate, though, there's no such thing as mercy when a girl makes a mistake. His silence seems to last forever, but finally he speaks, and I wait for the rocks to start raining down on me, but they drop them at their feet, and they hurry off home as he says, "Let him without sin cast the first stone." Soon they're all gone, and it's just him and me. Reaching out a hand, he helps me to my feet. "Does anyone condemn you?" he asks. "No, sir," I reply. "In that case," he answers, "neither do I."
See, I love that poem. I like that idea too. I mean, I think that was my brother is very religious, and he went to a Jesuit school, and he views Jesus as an historical figure who's done good things and has teachings that we can carry forward. And that is one I wish more people actually carried forward and walked around with. You know, I mean, we've all screwed up. We've all done this thing where later on we're like, oh, really? That was not the best idea. But you can be pilloried for it, or worse. And in some countries you will be actually stoned.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I do love that poem. I really do.
Yeah. I think it is worth saying that this is still going on in some places around the world.
Oh, gosh,
like
yes.
If a woman is caught, she will be stoned.
Oh,
and what about the man? What happens to him?
Well, exactly.
Because that irony kind of always struck me with the biblical story. Was
it does take two.
Where was the man in all this? What happened to him? And we don't get told about that.
No, Hester wore her scarlet letter. You know, I think the guy involved with the rest of it didn't. He just kind of sank into the background. I think that is true. I mean, in the case of pregnancy, you can see something clearly happen, but when there's no necessary proof, again, the woman is charged.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do like that. So yours is a robust Christianity who wants community and not casting first stones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And hope. I think that, for me, that's the main role and purpose of religion or of God and of faith is to bring hope and to bring change and make people's lives better.
Yeah.
Through our faith. I think our faith is supposed to be what drives us to love our neighbour and just to help change people's lives for the better. Yeah.
No, I'm afraid that I might be somewhere between agnostic and atheist at this point. I'm just not convinced. I don't know, but what I have noticed over the years is having a strong faith is really important to someone who's going through a dreadful crisis, especially, or just is feeling joy, which I also really like. I really love it when someone has had things go right, and they go, yes, thank you, because they're not just begging for help all the time, or going, help me, what have I done wrong? But they're also saying, this is good because of things in my life that have worked well, and someone cares about me. And so I actually like that too. I mean, I really like the it's easy to call for help, but it's something else to say, this is great, and I thank you for that too, which I really, really like. But I will read this poem to totally annoy everyone who's listening who might be the slight bit religious, and I've carefully chosen as many religious artifacts to insult as possible so that I can just spread the love. And we had this event the other night. There's a fellow named Ashraf Fayad who's a Palestinian who visited Saudi or was there for some reason, and he's jailed under threat of execution because he's an atheist. And there was this rather large meeting recently where over 50 people came and just read poems either about him, if they could come up with one, or just in general about religion. And I have a bunch, and I won't go into it, but the first line of one of them is, women stoned to death by their rapists or their fathers, you know, just exactly what we were talking about. And so I won't do that one, but this one is called Orphans. Sometimes I want to yank off burqas, throw yarmulkes to the floor, toss crosses away. Thus denuded, we will be what we are, orphans. No longer dependent on Daddy God to sort our problems, fight our wars, tell us right from wrong, parentless at last. with our own mistakes and graces, free to wage forgiveness and treaties, select sinner and saint, only ourselves to hate, to thank, to blame, to praise.
Interesting.
Yeah, so whereas I like the idea of religion, I think we have to clean up our own rooms first. And I think that's really what I wish people would do, is just stop blaming, well, your God isn't, and mine does this, and mine just, how about we stop that? Take care of your own people and who are struggling, and then you can go on to other views. I do think that I prefer religion to be not necessarily state-owned, but to be a private thing, I think. I think something that is your bargain and your agreement and your understanding with something other than yourself, as opposed to something you use to whack people over the head with,
I find it interesting what you said about state-owned. I find the US quite interesting.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Because you're supposed to have the separation of church and state.
Oh yeah, they're eroding that wall.
that for me is, if that's the way we're going to go, that's fine. I'm not going to stand here and be like, no. Yeah. But then, like, your presidents aren't elected if they don't say that they have a faith.
Yes.
Whereas, like, here it's the opposite. It's like Tony Blair had to not mention his faith until he left office, and whereas, like, I lived in France and they have very clear separation of church and state. So it's not mentioned. It's even to the point where they're not allowed to wear burqas now in government buildings, and to that kind of point. And I think that's more fair, really, than, like, at the minute we're trying to be really PC in the UK. And to the point where I think other religions take kind of priority over atheists or Christians generally, I think. And then in the States, it's just really confusing.
I have no idea what's happened. I mean, the founding fathers came running over there and killed all the Indians and stole the land fair and square, she says. But be that as it may, people ended up there. Many people ended up there. And many of them were actually fleeing from religious persecution. And they got there and said, we don't care anymore. And yet they really do. You cannot be. In fact, there were several people who were openly Jewish running for president, and that didn't wash either. I mean, we're going to see what happens with what's coming up in the States. But you really have to be Christian to an extent. And in fact, I remember, I'm old, but... And I guess I knew about this after he'd already died. But in any case, JFK was Catholic, and that was a huge deal, which I find hard to believe. I'm like, really? Isn't that just like, chocolate versus fudge ripple? I mean, isn't it just kind of Christian? But no, it was a big deal when he was Catholic. They were terrified. I didn't know what they were going to do. And I thought, really?
I don't think it was just that he was Catholic. I think it was his Irish Catholic.
Oh, well,
which is a whole
the Irish Catholic.
The Irish Catholic.
They're a dangerous breed, those ones.
Oh, yeah, well. But
yes.
no, that was a big thing. I wonder what would happen if someone was to say, I'm atheist. As a matter of fact, I'm absolutely atheist. And as a matter of fact, I'm not going to send your sons and daughters to war because I know that there's nothing after this. And maybe they would think twice. But I don't know if that would wash in America. They claim to be, the separation of church and state. But I think it's on paper.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's very different. It was really, really different. Do you, Mr. Allen, have a poem for us?
I know I've been debating what to read, whether to move away to talk about some of the problems of people who are in the church, or whether just to go very mystical. I'm going to read a very short little one, just talking about origins. This is a little prose poem. I have never quite been able to discover how it was that I became a member of the oldest profession. To the best of my recollection, it wasn't until the priest and astrologer got together that anyone knew that my body was sufficiently valuable to sell. Until then, all I was doing was having bloody good sex.
And that's what I was talking about when I said we do edgy stuff. No, that's all right. Actually, that's good. That goes into, again, what we've been saying. It's how religion is interpreted by those who get into power that will decide what this is bad and what is... As an anthropologist, when the Westerners ended up in what we were at that time calling the Trobriand Islands, we were horrified to find that the preteens and the teenagers would have open sex and premarital sex and had no big deal. And they were about to bring God to them when World War II broke out and saved them, I think. And everyone just took off, and the GIs didn't really care, and whatever was going on was fine. But 50 years earlier, they would have just had their whole way of life straightened right out, wouldn't they have? That would have just been taken care of. Well, I've done 2 poems, and you've done 2 poems, she said, looking at Charlie.
I'm still trying to figure out what to do.
I know what you mean.
Because I have one that is basically just summing up the gospel in a poem. Because I think in all kind of the discussion around religion, like the actual original message gets lost, I think, sometimes.
Yes, I agree.
And then I have one that is kind of like to my child, possibly.
Ooh.
Which I might do instead.
Yeah, why not? Which one do you feel most strongly about?
I don't know. Although I haven't looked at this one for ages.
Well, your handwriting's better than mine. If I was reading something I hadn't looked at for a while, I'd be like, oh, what is that word? No.
Okay, I'll do this one. It's called House Rules. Number 1, remember the Lord in all you do and in all you come up against. Love him with all your heart, mind and strength. Make his word your guide, keep him close at your side, and yea, though you walk through the valley of death, fear not, but trust in him instead. For there is nothing that you will face today that he cannot take. Number 2, always speak the truth, because the truth brings light into the darkest places, and a smile to the saddest faces. And in these times when lies figure on every magazine cover and billboard signs, the words you say might be the only words of truth someone hears today. Never leave this house without taking a good long hard look at yourself in the mirror and remembering your Creator, who declares that you're worth more than you'll ever know and who is proud to call you his own. Number 4, show yourself the respect befitting a child of the King of Kings. Remember that your value is not based on earthly things like popularity, jewels or Prince Charming. So don't conform yourself to this world's standards so lowly, for they are not worthy of a child of one so holy. Number 5, when it comes to God's standards, always try your best. But don't worry if you mess up now and then, because he knows you're not perfect and he's not waiting to condemn, but to offer forgiveness instead. Number 6, when someone gives you something gift-wrapped and tied up with a bow, I hope that whether it's a smile or a compliment, an opportunity or a present, that you say thank you. Don't snatch, but seize it with both hands. Take hold of it. Make it your own. Let it grow. When the time comes, share it. Pass it on. Number 7. When life hands you lemons, make lemonade or lemon drizzle cake. And when it pours with rain, pull on your welly boots and dance your way to the end of the rainbow, jumping in all the biggest puddles as you go. And when you're surrounded by floodwaters, remember you can swim. But Jesus walked on water, and if you turn around, you'll see him, reaching out his hand to help you back to dry land. Number 8. If you ever feel the need to put up your fists, remember the armour of God is the only defence you'll ever need. But don't let the sun go down on your anger, for if you let anger stew, it only turns bitter, making it hard to swallow or let go. Number 9. When you're tired of being strong, remember you can lean on the one who is strong in your weakness and who will hold you in your distress. So don't be afraid to cry or be weak once in a while. Remember, even Jesus wept sometimes. Number 10. Never show up in your life as an imitation. Find out who you are and be that person. And don't be afraid to stand out, for no one ever changed the world by following the crowd. Don't get bogged down, but celebrate the here and now, because there's nothing more beautiful or wonderful than a life lived to the full.
Ooh, I like that. I'm a Jackson Browne fan, and one of his songs from a long time ago was Child of Mine. And it was written to either a newborn or a very young child about, as you go through life, there's these things, and try to love each other and try to do that. And I really like that. I think thinking about religion in general, to me, well, we all die. That's it. None of us getting out of here alive. And we've lost some amazing people just recently, like David Bowie and such, and Alan Rickman. Breaks my heart. That was that voice, really, that sardonic, deep voice. But I think that if you have it within yourself to just go, all right, this is sad. We have to move on. There are no guarantees. I've lost my leg. Okay, fine. This person has died. All right, okay. And if you can do that on your own, that's great. But I think sometimes having something outward that will remind you these things is also really good. So to me, I look at religion as a cultural thing. That's a good thing if it is used to better your life. As opposed to control someone else. I really wish Laurence was here because he is hostile to all religions, and this would have been the fourth leg of the table, you know, because and when I said it to him, we were talking about this show, and he's got this work that's just come up and it's just eaten his life. And he was saying, I said, well, Laurence, I said that you're hostile to religion. He goes, well, not really. Well, yes. Yeah, he said, I am. But I've written this poem that is not necessarily hostile to religion. So we're going to have to find a way to revisit this topic and shoehorn this in without it being the Religion 2 show. I mean, or maybe we could, because religion's really big, so we could actually...
Well, we've focused very much on Christianity, I think, this time. So I think there's some opportunity in the future to take a look at this from a different perspective.
Right.
Maybe we should be thinking about that over the next few months.
Oh, I like that. Well, we have so many good ideas anyway, which I really, really like about the different topics. And we listened to the radio on the way here, and someone was talking about utopia. So now I want to do a show on utopia because we'll each have a different view of utopia. And Charlie, you said yours has chocolate.
Yeah,
mine does too.
Lots of chocolate.
Yes, chocolate, like a Willy Wonka factory come to life.
Pretty much.
A river of chocolate and chocolate trees.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. We wouldn't be able to leave this new world, though. We'd have to roll around. I just wouldn't be able to. I love chocolate. We have been The Poetry Show, and we are the Pod Poets. You can tweet to us on Twitter at @PodcastPoets. You can find us online at poetry.show, and you can email us at podcast@podpoets.com. Find us on iTunes and give us those reviews and ratings. This has been The Poetry Show, produced by Sophie Hardbattle and edited by Adam Talietti as a production of Eden Agency.